Welcome to the Gnostic Rebellion. Today we're speaking with Dr. Joshua Pritikin, author of a wonderfully interesting book that deals with a core theme here at the Gnostic Rebellion and the Gnostic book that deals with I'm sorry, and the Gnostic Church of Light. Religion Unburdened by Belief is the name of the book. We'll introduce him in a moment, but you'll find immediately below this video, in the description, you'll find a link for our donation button at uh, PayPal, and this program supports the Gnostic Church of Light. It's an historic building, and we invite you to become part of our historic congregation. We're the first fully owned and operating Gnostic church on the continents of the Americas, and your donations are tax deductible. While you do that, we'll extend this blessing. May wisdom and divine providence increase the unique genius of our congregation and bring us to health, wealth, and increase of days. Okay. Having earned his PhD in psychometrics in quantitative psychology from the University of Virginia, Dr. Joshua Pritikin, during his academic career, contributed to 10 peer reviewed publications and now maintains a practice in White City, Oregon. He runs Estrella Counseling and holds a level 3 certification with the IFS Institute, which perhaps we'll talk about a little bit later. But it is his book, Religion Unburdened by Belief, that brings us here today.
To firmness, I'm not sure where we are.
We haven't quite established firmness yet, so let's keep going.
Okay. So what isn't clear about it? Like you were raising the prospect of a bad trip, and I guess I was responding that. So you were noticing self-critical parts that were holding feelings of worthlessness, and I guess I was going to say that like those, like it's important to address those parts, like outside of the ceremony, like with a talk therapist or something. That those are emotional wounds
let's put it this way. Like 2 summers ago, or maybe it was last summer. No, I think it was 2 summers ago. I went back and read my college diary. And if you could have read my college diaries and think that I was in the current reading that, you would come over with the gun yourself just to put me out of my misery. But I found it pathetic. I didn't find it an illness there. I found a young man who doesn't know what his future is. I found he doesn't know, what his love life is going to be. Doesn't know any of these things, and he's not sure he's going to have much of either. And I'm feeling stupid and uneducated. Yeah, I mean, I had professors that loved me, invited me to their homes for dinner. So, I was doing okay. These were just irrational things, and maybe I was even running up against my fears by overcompensating. And I've done enough things, even somebody like you tells me I can be too intellectual in moments. That intellect scares other people. And, my mother would always complain, you talk in paragraphs. That's why everybody's angry with you.
Okay, let me try hypothetical then. So suppose we go back to that young Paul who's in college, and what if he had attended a Santa Daime ceremony? Like, would that Paul be blended most of the time, or like what?
That Paul would probably be so inspired in that moment. We have control of our emotions, and it's something that I took on since I was a teenager. And my father, just before he died, told me how he had done this when he was a teenager. And I was like, I wish you would have told me that years ago. It was like a validation for me.
Okay.
But as a teenager, one of the things I came to realize was I in control of my own thoughts, and that I felt I was insane, and I that my thoughts weren't my own. They were conditioned into me by family and society and whatever else. And I wanted to think for myself. I wanted my own thoughts. And that's how I started moving away from the church. And I was super hyper devoted, holy Roman Catholic kid. You know what I'm saying? I went and when I decided I was going to leave the church, I spent a year going to the rectory after the high mass to hang out with this guy. And I loved this priest because he's a fat, roly poly guy with a cigar and he cursed like a sailor. So I just loved him. So I had that identification. I even remember another one picking me up hitchhiking sometime, and I knew that one in the rectory too. And we got to talk about Herman Hesse, and he just wrote it off as too romantic. And this is the stuff that's driving me. So if I'm invited to this a ayahuasca ceremony or this tea drinking or whatever,
Okay.
um, I'm coming there so fully inspired. And I'm going to listen to your words as the director of this or whatever, the Brujo or whatever. Um, and I would be in such a frame of mind, even when I dropped acid, like, on my own with friends or whatever. I wouldn't do the acid if I wasn't in a good frame of mind for recent days. If I was stumbling through and playing the pity party, it wasn't a time to do acid because I'd be wasting my time. Um, Maybe I should have indulged in some more bad trips, but I think I had enough. Um, yeah, I had enough of them. I had plenty of good ones. If I was king of the world, everybody should do it twice, just in case one of them's bad. Um, I forgot your question.
Well, right. So I was I was trying to see if I could um, get to think about uh, like a
Oh
proclivity
yes.
to blending. Like maybe when you were younger, you had more of a proclivity to blending than now when you're more mature and you have much more familiarity with your inner system.
Well, when I'm young, I go out in the ball field with my buddies, and I want to be the best baseball player that ever lived. And I got to be Mickey Mantle. I got to get out there. And 3 minutes later, I wish I had a dirt bike like my other buddies, and I'd be evil Knievel, right? Um, so I think we move through so many personalities when we're younger.
Sure.
Um, so let's just say because I'm an ardent Yankee fan. I mean, I watch as many games as I can through the season, right? I finally went to the third stadium. I'm so proud of myself. Um, and so that character's still there. The 8-year-old boy, slowly beginning to discover he's not going to be a baseball player. Um, and every bit of that is there. I want to because I wanted to be a pitcher. I follow the pitcher. I try to predict where he's going to put the ball next and why. I want to identify that it was a four-seam fastball before the thing tells me on the screen. Um, and I'm looking at the logic of playing the same way you would look at chess. I'm an insider player, right? In my mind. But today, it's not a yearning. It's to be a baseball player. It's an enjoyment that even starts with that memory, much more pleasantly placed,
Mhm.
right? So, in that it's pleasantly placed, I've taken my ego has come in and said, okay, that motive of being a baseball player, is more of a romantic memory now. And maybe even I've changed that memory, even though I think I'm still having that memory of little Paul in the back corner of the schoolyard, right?
Yeah.
Um, and however I reify that memory, um, that says something more about me now, right? One of my pastimes is baseball. I can talk to you about the American sport. I can talk to you about the American spirit and how it's tied in with baseball. I can, be a really bad version of Ken Burns. Okay. Um,
Well, okay.
and
And what about your proclivity for blending, like the to like
I just
I,
blended there. I did my
like
little
it?
Ken Burns blending. right? And now I pulled back from
Okay. Sure. And but so, like, do you, looking over your maturation as an adult, like, do you uh, see do you see evidence that you are uh, have more capacity to stay unblended? Is
it. Good question. Um, yes. The percentage of blending is way down from, say, see, I'm 65 now. I'd say my highest blending periods were really in my 30s, even though physically it was a great time. But I was probably very blended in my 30s and my 20s and my teens. Um, uh, the whiner would be one of the archetypes that I took on.
yeah,
I was homeless twice in my life, so coming back from that and debriefing all of that, uh, geez, from the first time and the second time wasn't too far out. It was still 5, 6 years later. Um, I would have just even that memory coming in now, I would have been uncontrollably moving towards telling you about. And I remain invested in that. It took up a lot of real estate in my head. I was blended. Another way of saying that, I think, is that it's taking up real estate in my head. Whether for how long or how much, I think, becomes the issue, right? Um, Now I hardly think of it, but I do take the lessons I learned from
yeah,
and
yeah.
use
So
them
you don't
across.
forget it, but like every time it's brought up, you don't feel the like an uncontrollable impulse to tell me all about it in paragraphs.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, quite the opposite. I wear it like a merit badge. I would not want that not to have happened to me. I'm happy that I lived that life because I wouldn't have what I have now. I'm happy for all my failures, all my embarrassments, all my stupid things that I did, all the times I got in trouble. I'm happy for absolutely all of that because I wouldn't be this person. Going
Mhm.
through each one of them when I was well blended, yeah, I couldn't have sung that. No, this doesn't have to happen to me. This is not where I'm going.
Yeah, I mean, uh, we're a product of all our experiences, so it sounds like you're like in having taking that perspective as a um, and sounds like a wise perspective to me.
I'd say it's healthy, right?
Yeah.
Because if we're going to get caught up uh, in our shit, if we're going to be anal retentive, I mean, why do I have to carry that much shit? Eventually it starts to smell, right? And what I mean by that really is it's a poetic saying my character starts to deteriorate, right? Um, and both internally and externally. I lose the quality of my associations and I lose my internal spiritual sense of self.
If you're constantly taken over by parts, that's the hypothetical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
if I'm constantly there, when do I get to be me?
Yeah,
That takes
right.
an effort, right? One of the things I noticed, remember I was telling you about my friends who just became antisocial after we got high when I was in high school,
Hmm.
right? Um, in, in that I've noticed that people my age today who became really heavily invested in marijuana smoke forgot to mature. And I began to notice that in alcoholics and others. If I'm going to spend 10 years, say from age 18 to age 28 as a deep alcoholic or, a chronic marijuana smoker, and I forgot to mature along the way. I didn't develop because I was so busy being out in space, running from pain towards pleasure.
Yeah.
I notice at work, on this job that I'm on, how well this one woman who's 2 years younger than me, and she's a tough little cracker. Um, she's been in the auto business all her life. She's fixed cars, that kind of thing, and she's a half a foot shorter than me and 50 pounds lighter. Um, and this guy Eric, this kid they just hired on the driver crew, who's like 22, a little bit unkempt, really. He should wash his hair. That kind of thing. And the two of them get along fabulously. He's a car freak and super mechanic. He doesn't even want to talk to you about the weather. Cars. If you walk up and say, "Hi, Eric, nice to meet you," he'll say, "Well, I was working on my car yesterday." And he used to take Ritalin. He can't afford it anymore. Um, I noticed that these people get along as if they were the same age. And I realize, in a certain sense, the maturity is the same because the intelligence is down. They're both of average intelligence. They're not particularly sharp about anything. Their opinions about everything are not well formed. A little Dunning-Kruger plays into that. Um, I'm not used to being around provincial people, so maybe my judgments are a little outsider-ish. Um, but they all share this character trait that I don't understand. Uh, in that they're kind of redneck, and Vermont's the nicest state in the universe. I mean, the most polite people, but they've got redneck attitudes that could be intolerable to a cosmopolitan person. Um, and I think intelligence has a lot to do with maturity. I think intelligence has a lot to do with spiritual apprehension. Because if I was mentally retarded and I became fully enlightened, I kind of hate that term. Um, uh, who would be there to know that? Because I'm mentally retarded. Doesn't matter how friggin' enlightened I am. I'm still blathering out the side of my mouth, and the best I can understand is that the TV show is funny, man, very funny. I've worked with these people, um, and they're not there. There's no chance of enlightenment in this lifetime for them.
Hmm.
They make it into adulthood, bound to wheelchairs and everything else.
So this kind of I'm not sure how to connect this back to our discussion. It it feels a little bit like a tangent, like this um your
Well, ask
description
your
of the
question, and I want to explain it. Ask your question again. Maybe I can answer it better.
well, okay. Um so I asked you as you've grown in maturity, like you were saying that you agreed that you were more prone to becoming blended in your 20s and 30s, and
Well, what
now
I was saying, yeah, I got it. What I was saying is my maturity is also tied in with my intelligence.
I'm not denying that. It may be.
And that's all I was saying. And the other 10,000 words were just, backing that up.
Okay. Okay, but I wanted to go in a different direction here. So, um,
Okay.
yeah, so in terms of firmness, um, like how much Daimi could you drink in your 20s versus how much Daimi, could you drink today, and still remain unblended during the ceremony? That would be the question, maybe.
Oh, it's an interesting question. Obviously, I can't answer it really
Right.
because don't know. I never tried, and I can't go back to being 20 again, right?
Right.
Um, I know I had a greater tolerance for LSD, but then again, I don't know. I mean, the guy that got me the LSD 15 years ago, approximately, maybe 10 years ago, 10 to 15. Um, I don't know what these kids are making today. I've seen the drugs change. Um, you know, uh, and I've not liked all these changes because they fill it with a lot of garbage and
Okay, but
it's
you're getting into uh, details that like I feel.
unimportant.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like
I'm
suppose
sorry.
let me tighten up my question. So, suppose we didn't have to worry about sourcing, that the substances were, guaranteed to be
Yeah,
pure, like a
I was
precisely
just saying
measured.
that what little I have to measure it was there was no way to provide any useful data on that. But assuming that all the substances would be the same,
Yeah.
um, really a lack of desire. We used to say when I was younger, and it was kind of part of the whole 60s kind of teaching into the very spiritual world of drugs, um, was that something like acid opened the door. It showed you where the door was in your mind, in your soul, or what have you. But then after that, you really have to open the door on your own. In my 20s, I couldn't see that. In my 20s, I could see what the LSD was doing to me, what the mescaline was doing to me, what the mushrooms were doing to me, what the marijuana was doing to me. I did some really psychedelic marijuanas and opiated marijuanas. Um, and so I couldn't imagine myself sitting down in a chair and opening that door right now, and and the room coming wavy, and I'm seeing the veins in my hands. That's not going to happen, and that's all I understood. Today, I live in a world of symbols and ideas and metaphysical ideas. I'm still the same spiritual person, but I'm doing this now at a very sophisticated level. And man, that's so much better than acid. And I'm there. The door's open. I understand it completely. I don't need to know where the door is. I'm living in that room. I got to do my little retirement job here. I kind of need to, and I'm driving my truck all day long. You know what I'm saying? I'm driving my truck, and these ideas are flowing, and maybe I cop a couple of notes in my pocket, and I'm a little bit of a governance freak, but I have to follow politics. So I love that on the radio. I'm listening to NPR and and the Vermont station while I'm driving, and man. Yeah, I'm a wake and bake kind of guy. So I'm showing up at work, stoned, but that's not going to last for a little while. And the rest of the day, I'm still in heaven, whether I'm stoned or not.
Hmm.
I'm good time.
Okay, well, maybe let me just make a claim, and then you can tell me why it doesn't hold up. So suppose my claim is that uh, the when you attend a Santo Daime ceremony, given suppose you're using the same dose of the tea that you always use, like, so if that's held constant, and then it's these ceremonies measure your vulnerability or proclivity to blending. How do
Okay.
you like that idea, that claim?
Um, it sounds scientific. I would just start asking, um, the same way they ask in all sorts of polling. I would ask how wide is the sample of people that have done this, and I'd want to look into um, uh, the success in blending, the not success in blending, that I could begin to compare and contrast my experience. Uh, but
Okay, so
other than
you
that,
I see. You would want to look at survey data, but like my argument is more looking at the like from first principles, like given that uh, like we've already established that the substance, like the psychedelic, causes people to become absorbed in their private experience, and the more you take, uh, the more the
What
substance
do you take? If
invites
I
you into
get
that private.
involved with that, I failed, right? I failed the group, right? I failed
Right.
my word in a sense.
Yes.
Um, and so you seem to be setting this up as a derogatory thing.
What do you mean derogatory?
Well, I failed if I have a spiritual experience. If I was standing behind that person, I'd be like, go with it, man, go with it. And what is the being telling you? And can you hear anything? What are you feeling? And if
Right.
the person can't respond to me, then I'd allow them the sequestering so that they could enjoy their experience and get the fullest from it. I don't want them back in the group. Geez, I want everybody to leave the group altogether. So the last person remaining got his own private room.
Right. So the Santa Daime, um, they see the psychedelic tea as um, like as a distraction from what you're supposed to be doing. Like that, if you succumb to your private reverie, then you've left the group. It's like a failure, and you're saying, no, that's the opposite relationship that I've had with psychedelics. Like for me, going into the psychedelic experience, that's what you're supposed to do.
Castaneda, the first one who really brought this to attention, no matter how much he may have lied on his dissertation. No matter how much of a fraud he was, he brought a lot of very interesting truths to us, and fascinating man, really. In the end, a
Who
little
is
bit
this again?
Carlos Castaneda, the king of
Oh yeah,
psychedelic,
yeah, sure.
right? And he was a little bit like Rasputin in the end. Um, but when Don Juan is teaching him uh, the imbibition of the peyote, he had to hunt it in a certain way, and he was asked what the god was trying to tell him, or the peyote, whatever the spirit of peyote was trying to tell him, and Don Juan would help him to evaluate those experiences. Um, but it was the experiences he wanted to have. And Carlos Castaneda later on in the book series asks, and he says, "Why did you give me all those psychedelics in the beginning?" And Don Juan says, "Because you were too stupid. You were too left brain." Right. And so he had to take him out of the left brain consciousness of our culture, push him into right brain so he could eventually get to integral brain. And it turned out that Don Juan was really for the left brain. And Don Genera was his novel, was the one that was doing the unconscious work. And that was the guy that whenever he showed up, scared the shit out of him, sent him out in the whole thing. Right. Um, Even a funny story, something with some dogs or something, and he chased them or something like that, and was rude to them or something. And later on, when he did one drug, the dogs all peed on him, and they had a good time with that. Because he was just so far out in his
Yeah, I
experience.
haven't read those books for a long time, so I don't know the specifics, but
I haven't
it
read him in
sounds
a long.
familiar.
I haven't read
Yeah.
him in a long, but really, really worth it. So the drugs have spirits, as taught in the Indian cultures and any culture dealing with that. The Hopi Kachina songs, all these spirits that they uh, resided in the drugs, and the shamans took lessons from these spirits. It was more than just healing. They helped them to find, fresh hunting grounds and water. They were the spiritual advisors, and they presided over the marriages and the funerals. Um, They channeled the communication from Wakantanka, from the gods, uh, to tell the people what they needed to do next to solve a crisis, that kind of thing. So these were functional guys. Now in Europe and the northern cultures, um, uh, the where men tended to be more harsh, um, uh, these experiences were even dangerous, right? Because survival was much more at a call, and they developed more harsher opinions about their gods. These gods would gladly kill them for a minute and a half, just on a whim. I meant to go somewhere else with that, but I lost it. So proceed.
Well, I think you were uh, kind of narrating some of the um, intentions that people use psychedelics with, like that they, psychedelics have many uses and can be used with many different intentions, and in as a way of
Well,
contrasting
any,
from.
any life lesson is now a blending with whatever that lesson is or whatever spirit brought you that lesson. It could be the spirit of, peyote, it could be the spirit of cocaine.
Yep, yeah, okay. And so there's many. You can approach psychedelics with many intentions, but for firmness in the Santa Daime approach, the um, kind of succumbing to this private reverie, to the psychedelic effect, is what is to be avoided.
When you're dealing with a patient and they come in and say, I had a dream last night, I dreamed that, etc.
Okay.
This is an important moment, right? You're going to evaluate that dream. What does it mean to you? What are you seeing there? What are you feeling? But you wouldn't turn around and say, well, obviously, you were blended with the dream and you need to unblend from it. So let's put it away. I'm saying,
Right. No, it's only appropriate in a certain context. Like you don't like if someone um, wants to use psychedelics to explore their inner experience, there's no problem with that. It's just in a Santa Daime context, it's not the right thing to do.
yeah, what they're doing is negating their inner life for an outer commitment.
Yes.
Right? Um, and and I believe in our email exchange, you said that this is a certain proof of spiritual success,
Well,
or you implied.
it's a kind of achievement that you're able to sustain presence with the group, that you're staying firm in the group consensus reality, despite this controlled chaos that is uh, affecting you.
I had a spiritual teacher a long, long time ago, and he was one of the ego loser preachers, so to speak. And I remember a friend approaching him for study. Um, and what he did was, by testing him, he kind of insulted him. He was a bit of a jackass. And he noticed that this guy remained undisturbed. He was Mr. Calm. You know,
Okay.
he could give you a backlash and but not so much by yelling at you. He could just restrict you some way, shape, or form, right? Because he was the boss. It was my second and final cult that I was in. But he would teach this, you got to lose your ego, and he would show himself off as being so calm and so sedate. and undisturbable. Like the water, not even the ripple of a stone thrown in it, you know. Um, and it was one of the things I disliked the most. Um, I want you
Okay,
full of action.
so I
I
think what
want
you're
that
saying is,
water tumbling.
okay, wait, the audio is dropping out. I couldn't help interrupting. Maybe I should let you finish your story.
Well, no, my story's done.
Okay,
I just
so
said
are
I
you?
want passion. I want that water raging. I want, stormy seas.
Yeah. Um, so was that like cult leader was in acting serene like that? Was he trying to test his students or like reveal to them like how much they lack serenity or what was the
I would say under the guise of how much they lack serenity. I think he was a command performance. He made basically two vats of beer and two vats of wine in his garage monthly. So I think also in the end, I went down there to be close to my spiritual master, and near the end, I realized he was a severe alcoholic. Um, and you couldn't have anything but, he just knew to shut up before he said something stupid. And he did it in writing too, because he never wrote much. He never really had much to say. And that's, my broker's E.F. Hutton. And when E.F. Hutton talks, and everybody big piece of, remember those commercials? Or maybe you didn't see them. Better to be silent and thought of as wise than to open your mouth and let everybody know how stupid you are. That's
okay
his.
and like how does this relate to firmness like how um what's
Well,
the connection
again, for you, firmness obviously is the ability to maintain that serenity through all sorts of possible disturbances.
yes
So, go back to my tiff with my wife. You know what I'm saying? I would have been, yes, honey, go ahead. Okay, honey, whatever you want. We're fine. I would be keeping
well
myself.
like but is that coming from a um like a people pleasing part that is trying to avoid conflict.
No, I'm just mocking the serenity that I would supposedly have. And I could act it out if I want, if I was completely detached from my wife. But obviously there's affection and the complexity of all that, right?
Okay.
Um, so uh my let's just say for argument's sake, I actually was calm and serene. She couldn't disturb me. Um, well, then she couldn't affect me positively, even if she couldn't affect me negatively. There'd be no passion there at any level. Not even the passion to, bring home the bacon or what have you, or just want to get
Hmm.
home from see the wife and the dog.
Well, so I think I think you're going a bit too far with the serenity thing because um, like unblending doesn't mean you don't feel the things that you feel. It just means that your behavior isn't controlled by them. So like you could still feel the affection for your wife or the frustration and anger when she has expectations that don't align with your expectations. You could still feel that, but whether it controls your
Understand
behavior
that.
is whether you're blended or not.
Yeah, I understand that. So, you're removing the possibility of an emotional outburst. You're removing the damage that could do both externally and internally, right? If I'm unfettered with my angers and my temper,
Yeah.
saying, I can go out and buy some wife beaters and put them on and walk around the neighborhood with tattoos, right? Um, uh, that's important, and again, I would call that a base for spirituality. But I think the exercise of drinking the tea goes too far in the other direction.
Okay, how so?
Um, Sometimes spiritual people, and I brought up Rasputin before, he was a rascal. Aleister Crowley was a rascal. Um, Sometimes these spiritual teachers and just these two more famous rascals, believe me, a lot of them, if you knew their real life, and the propaganda just treated them better. Um, and so we you have or are defining spirituality as only one possible way to assemble a personality, um, and to have control. Now, the control part I like. That's a full spiritual teaching, um, I could question. So let me take the part that I really like. Um, in studying yoga, uh, first step obviously is yama and niyama, good thoughts and good deeds. So you got to learn to cultivate that. You got to be a person of character. It's even supposed a person of education and some refinement and sophistication, right? The next step now is asana. To pronounce it correctly, I say asana because I'm American. Um, um, and that's rigidity of body, right? And you're going to sit down to asana and you're going to assume whichever position you decide to assume. And you're going to find itches in places you didn't know you had on your body. You're going to find muscle tremors and little aches and pains. Used to be my left leg, the hamstring. I couldn't get past 40 minutes to save my life. My goal was an hour. Sitting with a bowl of water on my head, filled to the brim and not being able to spill it. The quest here is for ardent control of the body, rigid control of the body. And I finally added what would be kind of the next step and realized they both worked well together. I added my mantra, and the mantra was my breath. So I wasn't just listening to my breath anymore, but I aided it with the mantra. I got to an hour like nothing, and I had rigid control of the body. And I realized simultaneously I had achieved dharana, because I had perfect concentration. I clicked the set the timer for 1 hour and turned it on, and it was as if you sneezed and I woke up with the alarm going off for an hour spent. um had I kept at it, I could have started shooting for samadhi, but samadhi is really a very deep dharana. It's uniting, the dharana is concentration. Samadhi is now uniting with some object, whether that's an inner self or, I'm looking at an apple or still life or something.
Well, it's like a subject-object collapse, like that when that boundary dissolves, right? Um,
And that I very much like about control, because in being able to turn the mind off, you don't have control over something unless you can destroy it. So if you can control your mind, you can control your thoughts. And this is where that ceremony makes sense. Um, you've now developed a very strong mind.
are you connecting this back to firmness? I'm not sure.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
but I suspect firmness is still a little bit more. Um, and I would want to interpret it this way. You tell me if I'm wrong. Think of that uh, conversionary experience, as William James calls it.
Okay.
Would that not be a firmness? Now I've crystallized, as Spensky might say, I've crystallized my personality because of this experience. So I've crystallized something in my personality, in the overall makeup of all those drives, or a specific drive. Even. Um, in that crystallization, I've had a transformation. I watch, like somebody I know who watched her mother die in drug abuse, and so she quit doing hard drugs to take care of her daughter. So
I mean, it could. I mean, I guess it could um, cause personal transformation, but I'm not sure it has to. Like you could, I
okay,
think you could practice firmness without personal transformation.
okay, and so that would be perhaps healing from some blending.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a healing. Like you don't have to go to a Santo Daime work with the healing intention either. Um, like it could just be about uh, like a testing yourself. Just like you when you sit down to meditate, like how many distractions will I encounter during my meditation? Like will I notice that there are a backlog of parts that I need to address or not?
Well, even will you hear the horn honk outside? You know what I'm saying? Or the wind rush past your window, right?
Okay, sure. Yeah, if you can sustain attention without distraction.
That the mind doesn't really focus on it at all, not even to make a mental note of it. That's control of the mind, right? You're turning off the thought, right? So you're not hearing anything externally, you're not hearing anything internal, because even a thought is a disturbance.
But you can be attentive to your environment without thinking, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it's possible, right? Certainly that would be how you would protect yourself even from danger, right? So no
Yeah,
matter
just
how
to
deep
be
I was, I would have to know to get up and get the fuck out of there. Of course, now my legs won't cooperate. But that's all, I'm still a dead man. um, yeah, I agree with you completely on that.
wait. Agree with me on what exactly?
Still have to keep track. Your mind will still keep track of the experience. Just as your brain can know a millisecond before you say, yes, I'll do that, or no, I won't do that, or I'll take black 52. Right? When you're using your intuition. If I press this one, will it work? Right? Um, so the mind seems, the unconscious can be very aware because you're, in a sense, in that state, you've brought the unconscious out. You're just not aware of it. And it's now living out there, and I'm living in here, shut off and hidden, but I can't see you. So there's an experience of the world that's still there. Um, if I hear the cat outside or the dog outside, and three dishes crash, I probably want to get up now. Um, and so my mind will say, you got to make note of that one time to get up, really. This is a problem, right? Whereas, I won't, it won't register that the horn honked, or, two people were yelling on a street corner or laughing in the next apartment, that kind of thing, right? All the things that could go wrong for a lot of different, that's why they all go to little retreats to go do their meditating. So they're out in the woods, and they forget that now the bugs are going to start crawling up their ass, and, you know.